I actually met someone in DFW a couple years ago, back when I was living out there at my townhome portfolio. And I was going to daily mass, and I met this guy, and he was part of network marketing. He was part of Amway, And
Good.
so we shook hands, and for probably 4 weeks, he would take me out to coffee every Wednesday morning, and he was just buttering me up, And then eventually he pitched me on the Amway. And of course, I was running a couple businesses, so I'm not going to do Amway, But I like the concept of the network marketing, and that relationship, even though my wife almost made it go sour when they invited us over to dinner, and she just kind of laid into them because she wasn't expecting us to get pitched that night. I kept the relationship strong in some regard, and the last 2 weeks that I was out in Dallas, I reconnected with him, and he now has me in touch with Bob Dwan and with some of the big names in the Amway area. So they're going to get me in touch with the Jaeger and that whole entity.
Jaegers are still, I didn't know that. Jaeger's the father. I don't know if he's still alive, but he had me talk to 38,000 people in, because I was already famous for chicken soup, relatively speaking. We probably sold 10 million books or more. But I talked to 38,000 people, and I signed books for 12 and a half hours at Jaeger's thing. So if you can get into but they're on like 4th of July. So your whole 4th of July weekend's gone, right?
Yeah. Hey, that's all right. If it's 10 million books, that's all right.
Yeah. No. Amway's a good company. And if you do go to their world headquarters and talk, which I have, they're in Grand Rapids. Rich and Jay, you got to go through their art gallery. Don't forget. You'll go. I mean, they got the prettiest Americana artwork in the world, I think. And I've been to a lot of, I'm into art in a big way, but theirs is some of the best.
That's amazing. Yeah, well, I look forward to that. Welcome to the Old Wealth, New Wealth, True Wealth podcast. I am your host, Nathan Barkocy. In the True Wealth community and on this podcast, we are passionate about creating time freedom, impact, and purpose through real assets and real relationships, because true wealth isn't solely what you have, it's who you become. Welcome to the Old Wealth, New Wealth, True Wealth podcast. I am your host, Nathan Barkocy. In the True Wealth community and on this podcast, we are passionate about creating time freedom, impact, and purpose through real assets and real relationships. Because true wealth isn't solely what you have, it's who you become. Today's guest is not just a best-selling author. He is one of the architects of modern personal development. He has co-authored and authored a book series that has sold over 500 million copies worldwide. It's been translated into more than 40 languages and touched hearts of families across the globe. What started as a collection of stories became a global phenomenon, a movement of hope, possibility, and belief. He didn't just publish books, he built belief at scale. From Chicken Soup for the Soul to speaking on stages across the world, he has helped millions reframe their stories, expand their thinking, and step into abundance. It is my honor and joy to welcome a man who has influenced generations of entrepreneurs, dreamers, and leaders, Mark Victor Hansen. Thank you for being with us today, Mark.
Thank you, Nathan. I wish my mother could hear that. She'd be proud. And I was just with your parents, and they sure are proud of you, and they deserve to be, because you were on a great ascent. Not saying that you won't have your own little hiccups like all of us do, but your parents got it down right, and your dad talked so eloquently on your behalf the other night at whatever it was over at Grant Cardone's place. Yeah.
Yeah, incredible. Well, and thank you, Mark. Yeah, it's such a blessing to have parents that, support me, and, they've really taught me the definition of true wealth, growing up, and yeah, being able to speak on, Cardone's stage with you and, being at that event was just absolutely incredible. So I'm very honored that you're with us today, Mark.
Thank you. You get to ask any questions you want, and I'll do the best I can to make up an answer.
Well, I guess we'll figure it out. So I would love to just start, obviously at day one, right, for Chicken Soup for the Soul. This, the audience knows a lot about Chicken Soup for the Soul, of course. So I'm just curious, when you began that, right, at what point did you realize that wasn't just a book? It was a movement?
Well, Jack and I, Dr. Canfield and I spent 3 years. We met at the Mandala conference. He was sort of the kickoff speaker, as I remember it. And I was the follow-up, end-up speaker, and I sold product because I learned from Cabot Robert, the dean of speakers, and Zig Ziglar and everybody, I can name all the names, but they taught me how to sell product. And they also taught Tony Robbins. And Tony figured out how to sell more seminars than anybody, and I figured out how to sell a lot of product and loved it. And Jack and I befriended. Long story short, I taught him how to do heart-touching, soul-penetrating stories that give you God bumps, goosebumps, chilly bumps, which is the way every talk should begin and end as far as I'm concerned. Anyhow, I gave him all these stories, put them together. I said, we got to write that as a book. We spent 3 years working in either my office or his office, writing for 2 hours and walking for an hour, thinking through what you just said. How is it? Because it's really the thinking that you got to, first of all, you got to impound into your brain and etch into the fabric of your being that you're going to take ownership of something. Now, I had a 3x5 card that I kept private, but I'm so happy and thankful I'm going to become world's best-selling author, which I now am according to Guinness Book of Records, having sold over 500 million books. And I did a lot of books before Chicken Soup that were all self-published, but this is what the Chicken Soup books look like. And there's oversized trade. We got them in every size, big size, little size, mini size, every size. And then I created the licensing force, and we did over $1 billion in licensing, which nobody had ever done that in books at all. And I thought, what a cool idea this is. Why can't you can license film stuff? I read over a weekend Steven Spielberg's book and George Lucas's book. I'm an exceedingly fast reader, and I own biographies, and that's what we write now in my Mark Victor Hansen library. But it was fascinating to me that these guys had made $800 million in ET and $1.5 billion licensing. And I went and I said, hey, Jack, we're going to license. He said, what do you know? I said, nothing. He said, well, then how does that work? I said, well, when I was in grad school, the smartest guy on the planet, Buckminster Fuller, Einstein's best student, everything's a field. And you're either outside, which I was, or you're inside, and you read everything, talk to everyone, listen to everyone. And in the book business, what I'd done, and I'd recommend it to you because you're in a perfect age and place to do it, except I'm going to add one proviso at the end. I interviewed the 101 best-selling fiction, 101 best-selling nonfiction authors. Now, I did not ask them what every dolt asks. How do you write? You know how to do that. You've known it since you're 12 years old, probably, right? I said, how did you market 1 million books, Wayne Dyer or Danielle Steele or Nora Roberts or the guy who used to live here who just passed away, who I loved a lot, Clive Cussler? And they all had different answers, night and day answers. And I thought, wow. And then I wrote them down, and then we said, well, we're going to execute on all these. So I had a marketing plan that nobody else could touch, and I still do that. Not only do I have 50,000 books in this office of mine, but I got files on absolutely everything, and everything is I take notes and I highlight it and I put it in my journals and figure out what are the strategies that no one else is doing that if I did would take me up to the top of the mountain. Like right now with our publishing house, Mark Victor Hansen Library, we finished 91 books last year that are kick butt books that nobody thinks about. Like everybody shouldn't go to college. Now, obviously, I got a lot of degrees and lived in college and thought I was going to be a professor and was a professor. But, there's trades and there's tech, the three things. But we just finished this book that's rocking right now called Fetching Millions by Tom Howard. And he made $17 million his first year as a plumber because he sold plumbing and then hired plumbers. What a cool idea. He's not even a plumber. And it just, the point is there's more money to be made now than ever before in history, and there's more money in float than ever before in history, and most people aren't using their brain to figure out. It's Think, Grow Rich said, think, and then grow rich. Think, and you don't work and grow rich, you got to think, grow rich. I figure out how to out-market, outsell, outproduce, outperform everybody else in the book business because I love books. I'm an addict, and then I study all the people that figured out how to do it before me and are currently doing it and are going into the future and they'll do it. How's that? Does that make sense?
That's amazing. Well, and we just jumped ahead. I had a couple questions in line for you, and we just jumped ahead to them because something that I'm really interested in, right, is since you didn't just publish a book, right, you really built a global movement, and you've just clearly outlined that with, your marketing and the systems that you had in place, really democratizing inspiration is the way I'd like to say that. So that was before all of the social media, the podcasts, right, the personal branding.
Yep, that didn't exist.
Right. And so it really proved curated human experience could scale globally before all of that stuff existed. So my first question for you, before we dive into anything else really, is would you say that it's harder or easier to create an impact today and to build a global movement?
I think it's vastly easier. First of all, you've got the foundation and knowledge, but you got to take knowledge and turn it into wisdom, which is when I sign books like the one my wife and I wrote. I think we signed one to you. If I didn't, I will. Ask, The Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny. I say, ask wisely with love, because that's really what you got to do. Is when I talk to those 101 people, fiction, nonfiction authors, I told them I love the business, I love you, and I love everything you've written that I've read. And what I like is your help. Tell me how, Wayne Dyer, how you market more books. At that time, he'd sold 70 million books, an unconscionable number, because Dale Carnegie sold like 2 million books. So you understand that the velocity of book sales was better then. And then, like where we're at now is that last Thursday we got called by Roku, and Roku has Roku TVs, but they made it under Netflix, and then Netflix said, nah, we don't even do TVs, get out of here. And Anthony Wood, who invented it, now is bigger than Netflix, I'm told. I don't know the real numbers, but he's got 500 million paying subscribers and 120 million a day watching 4 hours or more a day. Well, they came to us and said, hey, look, what we have is we got exposure, and we're the king of distribution. You want to be the queen of content? I said, I'm in. I wrote all these books. I'm now writing books, fiction, nonfiction, and our big thing is biographies, just because I think we take people's impact story, bring it to life. There aren't enough stories out there. We need more stories, more mind stuff, and we need new ways to do it, because AI is going to change the whole world. It's already changed it, but with ChatGPT, with all the stuff Grok, imagine, it just blows my mind. I'm a scholar in Elon Musk. But the point is, we're in the most exciting time ever, but you've got to go through it. Every time is exciting, and all of us have to go through the transformations. And we're right now in the most transformative time in human history, as far as I'm concerned. Where I grew up was pretty stable like this.
Yeah,
and all I had to do is figure out how to sell books. Now you got to not only figure out how to sell books, but sell them in a new way. So to finish that, I told Roku, I said, look, I'm on the board of Wyland Foundation. He's the world's biggest marine artist. You know that when you go to Lake Laguna, he's got all the walls painted with fish. Do you know that?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, or you've seen him. He's got 101 whaling walls. Now we're doing 101 underwater sculptures that you're going to have to dive on. And he and I have dived. Well, but he paid for Free Willy. And it's the only movie ever. At the beginning of the movie, it has the Free Willy book, and at the end of the movie, it Free Willy book, and it was out for a month, and they sold 10 million books. That's a marketing idea. Yeah. One marketing idea from the genius, probably the most famous. He's married to the sea. He's straight, but he's married to the sea and does a wonderful job, and a great friend. I've stayed at probably 8 of his 12 houses. Anyhow, as a friend, my wife and I, and just, it's amazing what you can do if you just think, and no one ever, because most of the time you go to a movie like Eat, Pray, Love, and they say, this is written against Eat, Pray, Love, and you go, what is Eat, Pray, Love? And people don't know that it's attached to a book. So you got to do your videos with a book. Now that's the same thing for social media. Like we got a book out here somewhere, this black book right here. One moment. This is a top AI guy running Dubai right now, who's a Cambridge scholar, and we wrote his book. It's the next. You've read Alchemist?
I haven't, no.
Oh, well, you need to. It's sold 150 million. One book, 150 million. Now, I've sold 19 million in one book, but never 150 million of a book. I will now that I got a new goal, but I didn't have that as a goal before. And your goals have got to be in writing, and they got to be specific, definite, positive, believable, and got to come from the end result. You got to be there before you get there. All that stuff, all of which I'm sure you teach because you've experienced it in your real estate building. And for sure, Sharon Lecter teaches that very well, articulately also. I've been in a lot of her seminars. AI is going to be the new way to sell books, and the new way to sell books is going to be literally for the first time in history around the world. So somebody comes to me and says, I want to be New York Times bestseller. I said, that's great, but would you rather be New York Times bestseller, which is a political deal, or would you rather sell books in Swahili and Hindi, Urdu and Kannada and Telugu and make more money than anybody else? They
Right.
usually go for number two, and that's what we're doing. With Roku, we're able to go to 70 languages that quick. It just, I want everybody. Now, remember, this is me talking because I've already been 59 times number one. So you say, well, you're cocky, arrogant, sophomore. Good for me then. But I want everybody to have books available. That's 8.4 billion. And God bless. I'm with 8 houses and I'm a 9th publishing house, but they all want to take 17% of the market that speaks English. Great. Good for you guys. I'll take the rest of the market. I'll take the big market. You take the small market.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, and Mark, this is something that, we're just now touching on, right, with the AI. And I think that this is important because something I mentioned, while I was on stage at that publication event, right, is that we are surrounded in noise, right? We're just drowning in noise. There's so many opinions and voices, and everything is made public now, right, on all those platforms, right? The social media, the podcast. So how can people find right direction and really protect their internal compass when all of this noise is moving around them right now?
Wow, that is a great question, Nathan. So the answer is really easy. Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, like I told you, Elon is my hero of heroes. I mean, the guy's the richest man in the world. 8 multi-billion-dollar companies at the same time will get the first $1 trillion paycheck. Nobody's had the guts to ask for a T, not a B, not an M, a T, $1 trillion. And he's going to pull it off. He'll make Tesla if he gets $8 trillion in Tesla, which he's going to do I can take you through all the reasons in my mind, he gets $1 trillion payoff. But then what's he going to use it for? To go to the moon, and the moon to Mars, because you can't launch from here to Mars. It takes 70 days. From here to the moon, it's 250,000 miles. That's 10 times around Earth. More of the information than you wanted, probably. But the point is, AI is going to give us some futures, so all of us will be able to advertise books in unique, innovative. Take Grok Imagine. We're starting to do that to advertise all of our books, and it's brilliant stuff. And we got, because of who I am and being a publisher, I'm publishing 4 AI books by absolute AI geniuses. I mean, these guys are so beyond who I am, like Michael Clark and formerly the guy that ran Microsoft, were publishing his book. And here's a guy who ran Microsoft, can't get New York to publish them, but I'll publish them because they go there and they go, will you sell 2 million books? He says, how do I know if I've never sold books before? They come to me and say, can you sell 2 million books? I don't care if you sell them or not, but I'll show you how to. And then if you want to do that amount of work, because you're learning now, selling anything is work. When we did John Paul DeJoria's book, I mean, he's got 37,000 beauty salons in 103 countries. On success on shared is failure. Well, he did 100 million bottles of Patron a month. He owns 3 gold mines. I mean, the guys just pulled off real magic, and their books are selling like crazy because everyone wants to read about somebody. And if you got one of his stories, because he was homeless twice and has pulled off all this magic, every one of us is here, my opinion, like exactly what you said, to find their right livelihood and then go make a fortune. You got to earn your money freedom so you can buy your time freedom, so you can have your relationship freedom, so you can have your realization freedom, meaning back to what you said, you're passionately on purpose about something that's meaningful to you. If your mother says, you will do this because I said so, that's meaningful to mom. You're going to go to college because I told her I'll rip your ear out. No, that's not the right program.
Right.
Well, what you're doing is meaningful to you, and you're going to help a lot of people get rich with your books. And a lot will get rich with all the products you're doing, and you're serving a lot of people with that real estate,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that is true wealth, right? It's the community, right? You're serving. It's not all me, right? It's serving, it's community, and being able to surround yourself with those, those thought leaders like yourself. And Mark, you're touching on some really, really hot topics right here, really important stuff, which is really what I want to learn more from you. And I want you to share with my audience, because I can assume this wasn't all glory from day one, right? So
nope.
I want to ask you, what was the most extreme challenge, something that you never thought could have even happened to you that did happen to you? And then how did you rebuild?
In 1973 and 74, I was doing $2 million a year with the geodesic domes. My teacher, Dr. Buckminster Fuller, invented geodesic domes, Dymaxion cars that ran on 3 wheels, parked in their own space. Cool stuff. And it was way ahead of his time, but he didn't believe in sales. That's the problem from my point of view. Now, I was with Bucky as a research assistant for 7 years, first as a university grad student. And then I started running business and hiring him, and ultimately owned a company that called Look Who's Talking, where I booked speakers and I booked him. No longer do that. That's hard work, boy. Oof. Anyhow, but I went bankrupt because I was building out of PVC, polyvinyl chloride plastic at the wrong time. And in 1973, the Arabs said, we can write checks so big your banks bounce. And suddenly I couldn't get any product. And I was using $40,000 a month. I thought, in New York, we're doing $2 million, man. I'm 26. I'm hot. I'm cool, man. I'm eating top of the sixes. I'm having a ball. But one day I'm rich and next day I'm bankrupt. I checked a book out of the world's biggest library, New York Public Library. It had like 6 million books. How to go bankrupt by yourself. And I'm sleeping in front of another guy's bedroom in a sleeping bag for 6 months in Hicksville, Long Island, New York. So I'm no longer styling and profiling. But I what we teach in our Ask book, this book, which you always got to show your book every time you bring it up, just so you know. And Zig Ziglar used to do talks with me with 10,000 people, and they thought he got his book. See you at the top. He'd all through the talk, he'd be like that, like he'd be baptizing them with a book. And they thought, oh, poor old Zig Ziglar, he forgot. But then they'd sell 10,000 books because for 1 hour of his talk, what is he doing? He's saying, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. But we only teach 3 things in here. Ask yourself, ask others, ask God. And I thought, well, I'm going to ask God. God will tell me what to do. I said, okay, God, what is it you want me to do? And God comes back and said, what do you want to do? And I thought, come on, you know, what? Yeah. I said, I want to speak to people that care about things that matter, that make a life transformative difference. And next morning, I'm down at breakfast with my 3 roommates in Hicksville. We're all paying an august amount of $100 a month each rent. So you can see we are not living very well. Anyhow, and I said, guys, you know anybody young, not a cotton top, white hair like me, not a Broadway star, a movie star, a lawyer, a doctor, that somebody young enough I can relate to? And they said, yeah, this kid's 10 or 12 years older than you. He's out in Hauppauge, Long Island, New York. He's talking to realtors at the MLS meeting. Here's my ticket. Just tell them you're me. I get out there and there's 500 people. Now they're angry. They're mad. Interest rate's 18%. So nothing is selling. I'd never heard Chip, never met him before. He wound up that audience for 3 hours. But next thing I'm going to say is going to be hard for you to believe. There's no such thing as a lavalier mic. It's a little restaurant, and there's no such thing as a handheld mic. And he had a shout, but he was funny. He was light. He was bright. He was insightful. He had them all pounding on their chest before we left. And I go up to him at the end, and his voice is burned out because you can't shout for 3 hours. It's not good for anybody's vocal cords, singers or speakers like you and I. I go up and I say, I'm asking, right? I'm saying, hey, Chip, I want to take you to lunch. He said, what do you want, kid? I said, I want to do what you do. He said, no, kid, go get a real job. This isn't a good business. I said, let me decide if I can do this or not. Long story short, he says, stay out of real estate. I own the 5 boroughs. And not only did he mentor me, and we met every Friday from 4 to 6 o'clock before he went home to dinner with his wife and kids, but he mentoring at the same time Barbara Corcoran, who you see on Shark Tank, right? And she does a lot of ads on a lot of stuff she sells, like Kevin O'Leary and all that. Anyhow, he said, stay out of my market, and I'll teach you, do the life insurance business. You'll never run out of business. It's a bottomless pit for motivation. There's 1,800 companies. There's like 900,000 agents. And he said, he didn't give me a list or anything. The first day I'm knocking on 10 doors, and he said one would buy. Well, it's now 6:30 at night. There's nobody around at this metropolitan office. I go in, there's a big Cadillac out front, and I go, well, that's got to be the general agent or manager or their top agent. Either one, I don't care. I'll talk to him. And 9 had turned me down already. And I thought, wow, this is really tough. Nobody wants to hire seminars. This guy and I just had a Vulcan mind meld. First of all, I couldn't believe that I would be willing to work past 5 o'clock. He said, you're hired, kid. I said, great. His name was Big Tony, and he weighed like 450 pounds. Oh, he was big and lovely, lovely guy. Anyhow, at the end, Chip had said, to get the money, just say, do you want to cut the check, Tony, or have your secretary cut it? Well, there's no secretary there. I saw the office was empty except for him and myself. He says, I'm a big guy. I can cut it. Anyhow, he cuts me $100 check because then I was charging 4 seminars, prospecting, presenting good work habits, closing. I came back 4 times in a row on Tuesday at 8 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock. Whenever he had his meeting, I would be there, right? And but the best thing he did at the end of the meeting, he said, Mark, I'm the number 1 guy. in the number one life insurance company in the world. Now, remember, Prudential and Met, any given week, one sells $100 million more insurance, so they're the top. But that's the way it is in big business. I'm really clear. And I worked with both companies a lot, even around the world. I did all their international training ultimately. But he said, here's a directory, kid. You call every general agent manager. You tell them Big Tony called. And if they don't hire you, come back to me. I'm going to call them and tell them they got to hire you. You got it? I got it. He gave me a gold mine. Because people don't believe. The next thing I'm going to say is, if you've never done it, it's hard to believe. But I was doing 4 talks a day. Now, only Tony Robbins and I did 1,000 talks a year in the first years of our business. Remember, I didn't have a wife. I didn't have a kid. A little beat-up Volkswagen, the bankruptcy courts had not taken from me. So I'm parking that 2 blocks from wherever I'm talking for the first couple of weeks till I got 28 talks booked. Chip Collins was going on vacation. After he told me what to do, he said, I'll never see you again. I'm going on vacation to Disney with my kids, and they're little at the time. And I'll never see you again, I don't think. Little did he know that I have intestinal fortitude. Well, now I got this directory, and the next thing is going to be hard. There's no cell phones in 1974. And we had $2 worth of dimes in my pocket. So if I wasn't talking to somebody or traveling to the next talk, I'm putting in dimes to say, I'm going to be in your area. Can I come by and stop by and meet you? Now, they all assumed I wanted to sell insurance and be an agent. All I wanted to do is sell them on me selling their agents on sell more. And the mistake I made, I want you to listen to this one close. When you're with little businesses that are becoming big business, like if you train for Amway, you're not going to pull this off. It's too late. But if I always charged a fee and then sold product, because anybody that gets really rich, like, I taught in our book, 1 Minute Millionaire, which we sold 3.7 million. We melted down Amazon the first day we sold it, and it's 2 books in one. And because it's a universal symbol of freedom, and we teach people to make $1 million in 90 days. So it's sort of a cool idea. It's a really cool idea. And other than Think and Grow Rich, I think I've made the most millionaires, and I hope you surpass me. And I say that sincerely. I mean, my future days and kids' days are paid for, so you don't have to worry about me. I'm going to eat until tomorrow. Anyhow, the third thing, so the thing you got to do is in all the biographies we're doing now with the billionaires, they all get paid at least twice in the same thing. Like, I got paid to do the seminar and then sell the product. And usually I'd make more product money than that. But I should have taken, like, State Farm was so little when I started. If I said, look, I'll take every one of your agents and take them from selling a $100,000 policy to $1 million, and I want 10% of the increase either in cash or, better yet, in stock. They don't want to pay cash. They give you stock. I'd be a multi-billionaire now if I'd done that with State Mutual and State Safeguard. All these companies that I worked for, Guardian, I worked for all of them, but I wasn't smart enough to ask for the right thing. And either was my partner. I own 2 companies with Bob Proctor that I love. And if you haven't watched him on video, you want to watch Bob Proctor. He's just passed away at 87, but one of my closest friends forever. I've always had great partners. You want to have partners that do what you can't do, right? And Bob was the best curriculum designer in the planet. We created $1 Million Forum. And first, I'm going to wax on poetically one more sentence. So Bob Proctor's flying back from Malaysia, where he got me to do a lot of work. I trained all the Visa card people. The Visa card owner in Malaysia, a little itty bitty country, makes $50 million a month. And they're hiring me for $20,000 seminar. I thought, holy cow, I've died and gone to heaven. This is cool. Anyhow, and they're really nice to me. But Bob got me that talk. He's flying back from Malaysia you got to go do Taipei and then to LA. And he writes down, what do people want? $1 million? How fast? They want it in 365 days. Well, he calls me at 2:00 in the morning, which was not really happy for my family to all get woken up. And we had 88 animals in 1 acre because my daughter was becoming a vet and she could heal anything. Anyhow, so Bobby says, you and I make over $1 million a year. Why don't we teach this? I said, okay. I said, what do we charge? It's $5,000. So that day I'm doing a State Farm meeting in California. And by this time I got State Farm to do payroll deduction. That's the next thing you need to know. Payroll deduction means the guy just signs a chit, and if your product's $300 or $1,000, they just take out 10% a month for a year. And everybody, then you sell 100% of an audience. So if you got 300 or 400 in an audience, you're walking away with big paydays. But this day I'm selling that. And then I said, also, we started a seminar called $1 Million Forum. Bob Proctor, the world's greatest business mind alive, one of 3, he and Jim Rohn and Cavallaro probably at that time. Today it's somebody different, but it was amazing. 3 guys came up to me and gave me checks for $5,000 each. And I heard about it at 2 a.m. in the morning. It's now 8 a.m. in the morning, and I'm selling it. By the time the seminar came up a month later at the Ritz-Carlton in Laguna Beach, we had 287 people that paid us $5,000 each. The point here is that you sometimes got to ask for something big that seems ridiculous. I mean, I was getting $5,000 a seminar. Now I'm getting $5,000 a person. And I go, holy moly, this is a good business. And today, to extend that, one of the guys we're doing books with, who will go unnamed, went from 10 million to 100 million in 1 year. He pays for the ground underneath restaurants, because he said restaurants all go out of business in 15 years, and then I put another restaurant in. And everybody came up and said to this guy, I'll call him Mr. C, how did you make 100 million? So he said, look, I didn't want to teach it, and that's why we're doing it as books. But I said, I'll charge you $100,000 to do it. But he had 132 people pay him $100,000 to learn how to go from 10 million to 100 million, a very specific promise. And what happens is then he hired me to come and talk to 132 of them here in Arizona, a talking stick. We filled the place. And what he does is the most brilliant thing I've ever seen. These 4 meetings a year is all they'll do. And he has them talk to each other about where the holes are in their business and who's doing what to get to that. And before you meet 132 other people at 10 million, they got stuff for your business. You got stuff for their business. Everybody ends up going to 100 million over the next 4 or 5 years. So it's 100,000 worth it. When you tell your wife $100,000, your wife goes, Nathan, whatever you're drinking or smoking, you better stop doing it.
I know this.
Yeah, everybody pays this guy. And what I'm saying is do a different promise from $1 million, because you're over $1 million, to 10 million, or $1 million to 5 million. There's plenty of people out there that want that, because all of us have a glass ceiling sooner or later. And when I started, Chip Collins got me going, but pretty soon I was making way more money than him, because I don't need to write books. I've got it all in my head. I said, no, Chip, listen up, pal. They want to take you home in a book. They need to have their wife read it. So there's 2 people buying into the fact that you can be $1 million. Because if you think you can be $1 million, make $1 million in a year or 90 days, and your wife doesn't buy it, or your spouse doesn't buy it, or your girlfriend, you're done for. You're going to get hit in the financial solar plexus, and your wallet's going to get deflated so fast. They're going to go and buy new carpets, rugs, and a car, because they're sure you're not going to do it. And they just want to show you're now desperate. No, you don't want that. You need somebody that's a total 100% support team. Did I over answer your question by about 10 leagues too much?
Not at all. No, I love it, Mark. Yeah, thank you. I think there's so much to learn from here, right? Because you've been able to scale, and you've been able to witness the scaling of so many businesses, right? So many movements. And so, yeah, I mean, we've uncovered so much just in this short time, right? But I think was something I want to ask you, right, for my audience, especially, right? We have a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs that are listening to this podcast, right? My entire philosophy is really built around redefining wealth beyond money, right? And you've seen this in our book. You've seen this what we're doing, and I know that you've lived through multiple decades of success. You've also talked about, your times when obviously your bankruptcy, right? Your times where you're sleeping on the floor in a sleeping bag, and you're in your car, and so you have some difficulties. You have great success. You've lived through multiple decades of that success. How has your definition changed from, at the beginning of your career to where you are now for the definition of true wealth?
That is a glorious question. I think true wealth, I love all your definitions I heard you give from the platform, but I'm going to add a different one. I think it's realizing what you're passionately on purpose about and can never be fully realized, meaning that at 78, and I told you I'm going to 127 options for renewal, and I work as hard now as I've ever worked, and we're having a ball. I get to talk to you. I get to do exciting stuff. I go on the best trips in the world with some of the most brilliant minds ever, and we're working with all of them and having a good time. But then let's do the other part. My wife and I call her the goddess of exquisiteness. I had written down in the 20th anniversary issue of Chicken Soup, this one, all the stuff I needed in my ideal wife, right? I wrote down 267 things. Now, the editor cut it down to like 112 or something here. It says too much. She had to be happy, slender, radiantly fit, great personality, superb conversations, wise, witty, wonderful, have her own money. What a concept. I learned that in my first marriage. You don't want somebody marrying you but she had the negatives. You had to be a non-smoker. This isn't like okay with me. I'm not kissing an ashtray. It just isn't going to happen. Right. And I don't like cigarettes, cigars, tobacco, I don't smoke, of course. But we did that in the 20th anniversary issue. If somebody wants to get it, if you want, I can send you just that story, and you can share it with everybody for free. The point being is I wrote down the kind of family I wanted, and I've now got that. We got 6 grandkids. One of my grandkids came up to me, who's president of a student body, 800 little girls going, Everett, Everett, Everett. He does 100 free throws a day because he's deep into basketball. We take him to everything from, the Suns to the Harlem Globetrotters, which he's going to again, whatever that is, tonight or yesterday. Fascinating to me. Anyhow, I said to little Everett, 12 years old, I said, Everett, what do you want to be when you grow up? Not thinking he'd have an answer. He said, Grandpa, at 18, I'm going to play for the Phoenix Suns and make $30 million a year. I went, whoa. Not thinking he'd have an answer. I said, then what? He said, at 35, I'm going to manage them. I said, and then what? He said, at 45, I'm buying them. I said, son, do you know that's $4.8 billion and Grandpa's not helping you? I said, by then it'll be more. The point is, he's got goals. They are in writing. He's making thousands a month. He lives in Gilbert, and he is with his parents, of course. He doesn't live alone at 12 years old with his brothers and sister. And he house sits for people, but he's done so good selling it at $20 a day. He waters their plants, checks the door, says messages in the phone. He's got 4 kids working for him, and he's making thousands a month. He sells it, and that's called enterprise value. Every entrepreneur usually has started young. I made my first fortune at 16 as a rock star. The Beatles came out and I started a band. 2 weeks later, I've got 50 songs met, and I'm not a good musician, and I love good music. So that's it. That's pretty much how it's done. And that's what I think true wealth is. And true wealth is being 360 degrees successful. In other words, there's a lot of people, and Sharon's probably starting to invite you to the black tie events. We have as many black tie events here as anywhere in the world because there's more billionaires in PV and Paradise Valley for people watching around the world than in Scottsdale, Arizona. It could be second or third home, but we go to a lot of black tie events. And it's exquisite. But what you see is a lot of people that are really rich, that all they are is rich financially, but they're bored, they're lonely, they've got nothing to say, they haven't really thought past their own business or their own nose, and they thought being selfish and having money was it. That isn't it. Cabot Roberts' line was, service is the rent we pay for the space we occupy. Now, I assume that was him say it first. I think it was. So, and he was my teacher here, started the National Speaker Association, which I'm proud, one of the first 17 people that were members, right, of this great organization. And we taught each other how to speak. And there were a lot of people that complained that some of you guys they didn't like selling product from the platform because that's not a pure speech. No, my books go everywhere. They go places I can't go as a speaker. I want my books, my audios, my videos, my YouTubes, my Instagrams. I want them to go everywhere. If you're interested in learning and earning and returning, then I'm one of your guys. They'll listen to everything you got, everything Sharon Lecter's got, everything I got. Because, each of us stuff is finite. It may take a week. For me, I'm told, somebody said, it takes 55 hours to go through all the stuff you know. I said, well, that's not all I know. That's all I've got out, and I'm now making rest.
Yeah, well, I love it because, legacy, right? We really talk about legacy with true wealth, and to build a legacy, right? That's eternal, and something that's so easy to delete is, a social media post or something that goes away quickly, but something that never is deleted is a book, right? The book lives on forever. And so I think the power of, the articulated word through books, right? And through speaking engagements like you've done, right? And that I'm about to do and I am started on, that's how we change the world. So, Mark, as we wrap up this podcast here, I know you've done a lot of definitions of true wealth. You've really walked through, everything that you've learned, right, and that you've gone through. Is there any last piece of advice and wisdom that you have, from all of your experiences, right, from the rooms that you've been in, from the people that you've inspired, from the millions, hundreds of millions, half of the billions of people that you've impacted, right? What what is a secret piece of advice that you don't typically share that you think my audience would really grow from and really learn from as they're beginning their impact?
The preface to this question was about legacy. And you said book, and that's correct. And everybody over time has got to write their own biography or have it written for them by a company. Like we write biographies for people, markvictorhansenlibrary.com. But a biography is the only lasting gift of love and legacy that you leave to your family, your friends, the future of the world, that's permanent. Everyone says, well, I got a documentary and I got all my videotapes. Here's what's happened, yo-yo brain. Your videotape's up in the cloud. The cloud isn't up there. It's in a data center, and we got more data centers in Arizona than that area. And if tomorrow there's not enough electricity, that data goes, it's gone. Books have been around 6,000 years since the Sumerians created the quill pen and stopped writing with chiseling out rocks and started on papyrus back in Egypt and that part of the world. The point is, books last. They don't go away. And now we're finding them in caves and all over. And I opened up with Dr. Bill Saturno from Harvard. He and I wrote about it in National Geographic. We opened up the pyramids down in Guatemala, which are bigger than the pyramids in Egypt. And we found all that ancient scripts. So they've been around for a long time. I'm saying everybody's got to do a biography, and you got to mandate yourself, put it on your bucket list, so to speak. What are you going to do before you kick the bucket is what a bucket list is. And it's got to be a big goal. And the woman who wrote my biography, I think I showed you this picture, Relentless, is Mitzi Perdue. And do you ever go to Costco?
Yeah.
Okay, Costco, those chickens you buy for $4.99, which is a loss leader. If you buy it uncooked, it's $11.99. They all come from this woman who is 84 and looks great. That's Mitzi. She runs Perdue Chicken. She does 22 million chickens a week at Costco. And she's a great writer and a great friend of my wife and myself. And, if I'd ever been around Frank Perdue, I didn't know him, her dad, and then her husband, and her dad was the guy who started Sheraton Hotels during the Depression, right? Because he said, people have to have a place to stay, even in the Depression, and we'll just have the best place. And Sheraton was the first chain of hotels started in basically San Francisco, and he built 400 during the Depression because while everybody else was not thinking, he was thinking and growing rich. But her family, in answer now to finish that 360-degree idea, to be an heir, an H-E-I-R, an heir, to inherit, you've got to write your biography by the time you're 40 and then one every decade after that, because your life changes in 10 years. Is that cool or is that cool?
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, I love that. Well, and writing as much as you can. And that's what I think is really incredible about being an author, right? Is that it's a message that we get to share with the world, right? We're not keeping it just to ourselves, and you talked about this before, right? That, you've been with people who have had it all up in their mind, and that's great, right? But once the mind is gone, the mind is gone, right? So we need to share this message and that's all delivered through books. So Mark, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for joining me on this podcast. And for all of you guys tuning in, please remember that tomorrow is never promised. So I encourage you to go make the most of today. And let's go find Mark Victor Hansen if you're interested in, publishing your own book, learning more from him. Mark, what is the best place for my audience to find you?
If you want to do a book, it's called markvictorhansenlibrary.com. And if you just want to know about Ask, we give you all the videos and everything. Askthebook.com. Askthebook.com. Just simple. Or if you just want to go to YouTube and watch all my videos or any other social media, have at it. And I hope you enjoy it because it's free and just it didn't exist before. If somebody truly wants to be successful, they got to do a little bit of work, maybe like you said, a little bit of digging, but the information is out there. Yours is out there. Mine's out there. There's giants that you'll get to stand on the shoulder of great people. If you think great thoughts, you become great. It's that simple. If you don't think great thoughts, you can't become great. We're just redoing this book. One of my students did the book of Proverbs. Now we're doing a much better cover, but God's book of wisdom. And there's 31 of them, and it's in the middle of the Bible. But you read one a day, and by the end of the month, you're wise. And if you got wisdom like Solomon did, then you get the riches, the fame, and everything else that you could want. Isn't that cool? And we're doing that book. That'll sell tens of millions. We did the most extraordinary cover, and I wrote more fun stuff in that. Like, Sharon had me write 3 Feet from Gold, the Ford, and the Ford to Winning the Devil by originally Napoleon Hill, and she updated it and did a phenomenal job, and I narrated some parts of it too.
Yeah, that's fun. What a highly impactful book. That book is...
Yeah. Love it.
It moves you. Yeah, yeah. Well, Mark, thank you so much. And like I said, I'm very honored to be on this podcast with you, and to all of my audience tuning in, thank you for being with us on this podcast, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you for listening to the Old Wealth, New Wealth, True Wealth podcast. This is Nathan Barkocy, and please remember that tomorrow is never promised. So I encourage you to make the most of today.